Hi, welcome to Train Signal. I'm Bill, and this lesson is entering and editing data. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and get started with creating our first spreadsheet. We'll talk about entering data. We'll edit it, cut, copy, and paste it, undo and redo. Undo is one of my favorites. We'll show you how to insert rows and columns, also how to delete them. Width and height, adjusting the width and height of your columns and rows. Find and replace when we want to go ahead and change data in our cells. Working with ranges, we'll show you how to select ranges, and we'll show you a few shortcuts to do that. Autofill. Autofill will fast become one of your favorites, your best friend. We're going to show you how to autofill with text, with numbers, and I'm even going to show you how to create custom lists. This is something that's going to save you a lot of time down the road. Let's go ahead and let's get started. Where do I begin? With a new workbook. In our last lesson, we showed you how to create a new workbook. Now we're going to go and talk about entering data, putting in text, numbers, whatever we need to go ahead and work with our Excel sheet. We'll then go ahead and show you how to move it around. Again, time saving. Cut things, copy them, paste them, moving them around, all kinds of things, and I have some keyboard shortcuts for you, and we'll take a look at the clipboard. Undo and redo, way to go ahead and help us if we make a mistake. I can undo and I can redo things, certain things, and I have keyboard shortcuts for those. Then we'll work with inserting rows and columns. What if I need to have another column of data in between two that I have already created? What do? Do I erase all that stuff and start over? Do I copy and paste it and move it over? Well, I could do some of those things, but inserting rows or columns wherever we need to makes that a lot easier. Again, we're all about saving time with this stuff. Width and height. We can adjust the width and height of our rows and columns. Sometimes the data that we have may be longer than the column is wide, but we can fix that. We can adjust those widths. We can go ahead and do it automatically. We can do it one at a time, whatever we need. Find and replace. This is exactly what it says it is. We'll find certain data and replace it with other data. Now, if you only have one cell that you need to replace, it may be easier just to go ahead and type it in there. But if you have the same value in several places, find and replace is going to make that a lot easier for you. So, the first thing we're going to do is switch to our Excel. I'm going to start by showing you how to enter in data. Many people do this differently. There's a few different ways you can do it. If you remember in our previous lesson, I went ahead and showed you the formula bar. The formula bar is something that we can also use to go ahead and enter in text or numbers. You'll see when I type up here, it appears down here in my active cell. Now, that's one way to do it, and that's perfectly valid. Myself, I don't care to do it that way. So I'm going to use my delete key and get rid of that text. I would go ahead and prefer to enter my text right here in the cell that's active, the cell that I had selected, whatever that is. That way I'll always know where I am. If I start up here and maybe my selected cell is off of my screen, I may not know exactly where I am. I might not have the data I want or the formula, if I'm doing that, in the cell that I want it to be in. So I like to go into the cell where I want this data and start there. Now, a lot of people have the wrong idea about doing this. You go ahead, you double click in that space, and you get that flashing bar, our insertion tool. Now, when we see that, we're programmed to simply start typing. And you can do that here, but you don't have to. You went ahead and just gave yourself an extra step. When the cell is selected, it's ready to start accepting data. If you look down here at the bottom, you'll see it says ready, and my little screen tip says in ready mode. That means it's ready to receive that data. I don't have to double click in there. All I need to do is start typing. I'm going to put in my name. And you'll see it entered it in. I have my insertion tool, that flashing bar. Up here in the formula bar, I just put my name in and it says Bill. But look down here in the bottom, in the lower left corner, it now says enter. And my screen tip says in enter mode. That means I'm in the process of entering text. I also want to point this out to you. You see this X, when I hover over it, it's red, and this check mark. And when I hover over that, it's blue. You'll see that is canceled, that is enter. When I'm entering text, in my enter mode, I have these icons here. They weren't there before. I have the flashing insertion tool here. Excel is not going to allow me to do a lot of things. This is what we call an open cell. Look at my toolbar up here. Look at my ribbon. Almost every single one of these options is grayed out. It's not going to let me do almost anything with this cell because it's open. If you've ever gotten to a point in Excel where it won't let you do something, where just like we looked at up here in the ribbon, all of our options are grayed out, check to see if you have an open cell. Look down here for enter, look for that insertion tool, check for the red X or the blue check mark. If any of those are there, you have an open cell. Now it's very simple to close a cell. You can click on another cell, you can hit enter, or what I want to do just to show you is I can go ahead and click on the blue check mark. You'll notice it says enter. That is the same as hitting the enter key on your keyboard. So I will click that. You'll notice that I no longer have the flashing insertion tool. This says ready, not enter anymore. And again, I have all of my options available to me because my cell has been closed. If I want to change the data in that cell, again, a lot of people do more than they need to. They'll bring their selection tool up here, double click again, click and drag so that that text gets highlighted in black. They'll delete it or simply start typing over it. Now, you don't need to do that. It's ready. This cell is ready to accept data. If I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this data, all I need to do is start typing. It overwrites the data that we had in there. Right now I see that it says Chicagoland, which is part of the name of our company, as you know, Chicagoland Fish. I'm going to go ahead and use this because notice when I hit enter there, it keeps me in the cell that I was working in. If I hit enter on my keyboard, it moves me down. Or if your hand is on the mouse and you don't feel like getting your hand off the mouse or you want to stay in that cell, just go ahead up here and click on the blue check. As you already know, the name of our company is Chicagoland Fish. I didn't complete the words, so I need to go ahead and I need to edit the text that I have put in there. I need to go ahead and add the word fish. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. Personally, I think the best way at this point is to move up into my formula bar, click in there right after the word Chicagoland. I have my insertion tool again, and I'll simply add space and the word fish. And there we have it, Chicagoland Fish. We're going to start with that, the name of our company. We're going to go ahead and add some other information. This time I'm going to add some numbers, actually the date. Let's pick a date. Let's say that it is the beginning of the year. We're trying to close up last year's books. So we'll put January 10th, 2006. We're going to go ahead now and we're going to create a basic spreadsheet showing us the quarterly sales of our fish at our 6 different locations. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with my headers, names of my columns. We will go ahead here and put in first quarter. Now you'll notice that my text is longer, wider than my column is. It kind of hangs into the next column. That doesn't mean that it's part of column C now. This text is not in column B and C. In fact, let me click here and select B4 again, and you'll see first quarter. All of that text is really in column B. The way Excel handles text that goes into another column, like this, is to have it extend into it until you go ahead and start putting something in the cell next to it, in the column next to it. So what I'm going to do here is put in second quarter, and you see what happened here. The text is still there, it still says first quarter, but this is second quarter. Now I'm going to continue to do this here, but first I want to edit the word first. I'm going to abbreviate to 1ST to hopefully make it a little bit smaller. It's a little better, it's not great, but don't worry about that, we're going to fix that later. Let's change second quarter. And we'll go ahead and continue on. Whoops. Remember, don't hold the shift key down when you're typing numbers. Open cell. Okay. We're going to go over here now and start listing our stores by number. Our stores are numbered by their zip codes. Six oh one 59. Okay. Now obviously A6 is wrong. So I can go ahead and I can fix this in one of two ways, like we talked about before. I can either go ahead and up here, like I did with my quarters, and delete that, or I can simply go and type over it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish the rest of this worksheet. You don't need to sit here with me while I type in all of these numbers and the rest of the data that we need. So I'm going to take a pause, and when I come back, we'll continue on. And I'll also tell you, you noticed that I went up here. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. There, now that looks a lot better. I did notice while I was away before that I had made a mistake earlier. I put the date in as January 10th, 2006. Let's just go ahead and change that to 2007. Okay. We have our sales data for all 6 stores broken down by quarters. Eventually we'll add all of these up, but that'll be the next lesson. What we want to imagine that we're going to do is say we're going to break out this information down to a little bit more detail. We want to have month by month for each store. And we want it on the same worksheet, so we have to start copying and pasting some of our data. Let's say that we want to create another table for our 60613 store down here. Well, I could go ahead and select this cell and type in 60613, but maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I'm not comfortable with typing. Maybe it's a lot more data. What I'm simply going to do is copy it. So I'll select that cell, A5, and I'm going to go up here to my first group on my ribbon. You'll see this little pair of scissors, that is cut. The little 2 pages there, that's a copy. And I have the clipboard here, and that's paste. So what I'm going to do is copy this data. Simply by selecting that cell, click on the copy symbol, bringing my mouse to the cell I want to paste it in. Notice that I've got this rotating marquee around here. Technical term for that, we like to call that the dancing ants. We're going to go down here to A16. We're going to go back up to our ribbon, to this group, the big paste icon, click there and paste. You'll see that it copied that data from here and pasted it in here. Pretty nice, huh? We can go ahead and we can do that with the rest of them, whatever we need. If you want to go ahead and get rid of the dancing ants, it's very simple. All you need to do is hit the escape key in the upper left corner of your keyboard. Now, I didn't mean to go ahead and put 606.1.4 here. I wanted to move it down to another section of my worksheet. Let's say I want to bring it down 2 more rows. I'm going to put it in A19. Well, I could copy and paste it and delete it, or I could cut it. Cutting the data in the cell actually removes it so that you can paste it somewhere else. So what I'm going to do up here is choose the scissors icon for cut. Once again, I get my dancing ants. I will select A19 and paste it there. Copying, made a copy of the data and pasted it. Cutting and pasting actually move the data out of one cell and into another. There's more than one way to cut, copy, and paste. As I told you before, I would have some keyboard shortcuts for you. I also have some mouse shortcuts. Let's go ahead and let's go up to here to 60714 and copy that. Now sure, I could go up here and press the copy button, or I can right click and you'll see I get this menu here with a lot of different options for that cell. But here's my cut and copy. I also get this little mini menu, but we will talk about that at another time. I'm going to go ahead here, click on copy, once again my dancing ants, and I'll move down to A22, right click there, and paste. Let's also go ahead to 60540, and again I could copy up here, I could right click, or what I want to do is use a keyboard shortcut. If I hold down my control key, which is in the lower left and right corner of our standard keyboard, and use the C, the letter C. Control C copies, and Control V, Control plus the letter V, pastes. Let's go ahead and let's do the same thing over here. Control C for copy, Control V for paste. So we saw our menu, our buttons, and we also used our keyboard shortcuts. When you copy things or cut things, they're stored in the clipboard. The clipboard is a virtual storage tank. It's a place where you can hold data to use again at another time. Now when we copy and paste, it pastes the last thing that we copied or cut. The clipboard can be used though to hold a lot more data. If I go up here, you'll see it starts to say clipboard, and the little button here, which is my dialog box launcher, I'll go ahead and click there and it opens our clipboard. The clipboard is empty right now because we haven't opened it. So as we copied and pasted, it just pasted one time and it was gone. If you open the clipboard, you can use it to store things. Let's go ahead and let's copy a few more things. And you'll see as I copy, select and copy, we see them here in my clipboard. They're stored there. And I can use them again and again and again. And right here it says 5 of 24. I can go ahead and store up to 24 individual pieces of data in my clipboard. So what I'm going to do is I will delete all of this stuff that we've already put in there. And instead of pasting it the way we did, I can go ahead and use it anytime I want, use it again from my clipboard. Simply by selecting the item that I want to paste and clicking on it anywhere and anytime I want. Let's say I want this here, or I need this here, this over here. Up to 24 items on the clipboard, and I can use them wherever I want. I can even go ahead and paste this data into another workbook. My clipboard will stay there with all of this data for me to use over and over again until I select clear all or close the program. So let's go ahead, let's open up a new workbook. You'll see I'm in book 3 now. New blank workbook, and I will start to click on the different cells and paste things from my clipboard. Now we're going to close this file because we don't need it. And I'm also going to clear everything in my clipboard and close the clipboard because I don't need that. And the last thing I'm going to do in terms of that is delete all of that data. I have one more keyboard shortcut I'm going to show you, and that is the cut. We saw our scissors, we right-clicked and we saw a cut there, but there is also a keyboard shortcut, Control X. And when I select a different cell, and I can use my Control V to paste. So Control X is the same as using the cut button or right-clicking and cut. And I don't have to use the paste. I can just use paste up here. I don't have to use Control V, whatever I want. Okay. Let's get rid of this data. We're actually not going to explore creating more tables on our worksheet here. We're just going to work with the one that we have. Let's say I've made a mistake. I'm going to go ahead and select this and delete it. I'm going to delete all of these things. And maybe I had intended to copy them or cut them instead of deleting, but they're gone. I just deleted them like, oh no, what have I done? Don't panic. We have an undo command. We can undo the last action that we just did. In fact, we can undo the last 100 actions, which is a great deal more than any older version of Excel. The easiest way to do it is go right up here to our quick access toolbar, and you'll see that little blue arrow pointing to the left. When I click on it, every time I click it, it will let me undo what I just did. Now, once I undo something, I have the redo button. And the redo will allow me to redo what I just undid. You'll see once I've run out of actions to redo, the redo button grays. You see this little arrow next to the undo button. I can press that, and you see these are the last 100. Well, there's probably not 100 in here, but this is the last things that I did. I can go down. See, it took me pretty far back. And I can keep redoing and undoing till I get back to where I was. The undo and the redo can be your best friend. However, you can't undo everything. Typically, the things up here in your Office button, like Save, can't be undone. But most things can be. Just like everything else in Excel, there's more than one way to do these things. So let's go ahead and let's explore my favorite keyboard shortcut, Control Z. Control Z is undo. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, hold down my Control, type the letter Z, and that's undo. Control Z is undo, Control Y is redo. Just like using our buttons up here. I've decided that I needed more information in my worksheet than what I have. My store numbers 6061314, etc. don't indicate any information about the store. Nobody knows where they are, which store they are. Just know the numbers. And remember their zip codes. You don't know what store it is. So we're going to put in another column that has the area where the store is located. Now what I'd like to do is get that data right in here in column B, but I already have first quarter and all my first quarter totals in that column. So what do? Do I cut all of this information and move it over, paste it somewhere else? Or do I delete all of this and type it all over again? Well, yeah, I could do those things if I wanted to, but I don't really want to. That's a lot more work than I want to do. I've already done that once. So instead, we are going to insert a new blank column between A and B. Essentially, we're going to move all of this data, everything this side of column A, and push it over one column. To do that, we're going to go up here to column letter B, click one time. Now that has selected that entire column. You see that we've got the black selection box all the way around. It goes all the way down to row 1,048,000. It has selected that whole column. We're going to go and we are going to insert a new column. And a very simple way to do that is go up to our toolbar here and click the insert button. See what happened? Column B is now blank and everything else has been pushed over. Or think of it as we squeezed another column in between A and B and kind of pushed everything over the C. So now I've got a brand new column here that's blank for me to put in anything I want. Let's go ahead and let's undo that because I want to show you some other ways to do it. I can go ahead and I can right click and you'll see I have an insert button there. It does the same thing. Let's undo that as well. A question that I often get is how can I insert multiple columns? What if I want to go ahead and put in 3, 4, 100 columns? Do I have to go insert 100 times or 3 times or 4 times, whatever I want? No. If I want to insert, let's say 4 columns in between A and B, I want to push everything over 4 columns to the right. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to select by clicking and dragging 4 columns, B, C, D, and E. And when I use my insert button, it inserted 4 new columns. It pushed everything over by 4 columns. I don't need all of those columns, so I'm going to go to the delete button and delete them, and it pulls everything back to where I was. Insert and delete. But I do need 1 column, so I'll go back to my insert. And I'm going to go ahead and type in the locations of our stores. Okay, I realized as I was putting my store locations in that I had one more store than I had data for. I apparently forgot to put in the data for my last store, my Schaumburg store. What we need to do is insert another row so that'll give us a place to put that information. What I'm going to do is go ahead and select row 10. I'm going to just click right there. Same way I clicked on the column letter, I'm going to click on the row number to select that entire row. And I'm going to go to my insert button. And you see it inserts the row. This time it pushes everything down. The insert button up here is kind of a generic insert, columns, rows, whichever you choose. Now, In A10, I'm going to type in the area code of the store, although I see that this is the area code for the Schaumburg store. This is the area code for the Naperville store. This is the we're missing the area code here for the Chicago Rogers Park store. So all of this stuff is kind of messed up. What we need to do is start moving these cells around. Now we know how to use cut and paste, and I can do that. In fact, I'm going to take the Schaumburg, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to paste it right here. But I want to show you something else. I want to show you how to just simply move a cell by clicking and dragging it. I'm going to select A9 here. It's got 60159. And when I move my mouse so that it's right on the edge of my border, you see if I move out, it's that big white fat crosshair. That's my selection tool. But if I get it right on the edge, see how that turns into a four-headed arrow with the arrowheads at the compass points and then my big white arrow, my pointer. When I have this, if I hold down my left mouse button, I can drag it wherever I want. And when I let go, it's moved that information there. It's not cutting. It's not using the clipboard. It's just moving. So we're also going to go ahead and pull this down, and type in the new area code for this store, which is 60626. And I could move this anywhere I want. I don't have to just put it in the cell below or next to. All right, wait here while I go ahead and type in the sales figures for our Schaumburg store. Finished. That looks better. Now we have all the data that we need to continue forward. What we're going to do next is solve the problem of our text being wider than our column. It's very simple to do this. There's several ways, again, just like everything else. What I want us to do is we're going to go ahead and select column B again. And when I move my mouse right here in between columns B and C, in between the column letters up there, notice it's a crosshair with an arrowhead on the left and on the right. When I hold down my left mouse button, I can drag that column to the right, or to the left for that matter, until I can see all of my text. I no longer have to have the text slide underneath the column next to it. There we go. I can make it as wide as I want. Looking better already. Now I'm going to undo this. I got to go back a couple of steps because I want to show you another way to do it. Imagine that I have a column full of numbers. Maybe I've got that full 1,048,000 rows. There's something in every row. I can't scroll up and down, or I could, but it would take me forever to scroll up and down through the column to figure out where the widest piece of data is so that I know how wide to make it. Well, I can't do that. So what I'm going to do instead is use the AutoFit. I'm going to let Excel measure those cells and figure out which one is the widest and resize that entire column. So to do that, I'm going to once again select column B, get my mouse pointer between the B and the C so I have that crosshair with the two arrows, and I will double click. And see, that automatically sized it. That went down that whole column, found which of these was widest, and made the whole column fit all of that data. I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make my columns of numbers all very small. Now you may have seen this before if you've worked with Excel and wondered what happened. Some people see that when their numbers get like that and they panic. They said, oh my goodness, Bill, what happened? Did I screw up something? Is my formula wrong? What happens is Excel treats numbers differently than text. We saw up here our first, second, third quarter, it all kinds of slides under the row next to it, or like we have with Chicagoland Fish, goes over the column next to it. In here with numbers, it gives you a pound sign, and also you'll notice as I hover over that cell, it gives me the number in a screen tip. I need to go ahead and resize these columns so that they all fit all of these numbers. Now I can do it the same way we did before. I can go ahead and double click up here and it will take that and resize it for me. If I have several columns like I do here with all of this data, I can do them all at once. I'm going to go ahead and select D, E, and F, and I just need to get my pointer between any two of these. It doesn't matter. And double click. And you see it resizes them all at one time. This of course works with width and height of my columns and rows. Let's say that for some reason I want to make row 11 taller. I simply need to go ahead and drag that down. Perhaps you've got wrapping text, and we'll look at that later. You need to make a row wider, taller. You can do the same thing. Double click to make it the optimal size, or click and drag. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a look at is find and replace. The find and replace is a great tool to go ahead and find text or numbers and replace them with something else. Like I told you before, if you only have to replace one value, well, it's probably just as easy to retype it in. But if you've got to change the same thing several times, find and replace can go ahead and locate all instances of that and change it to whatever you say. You'll see here in my header row I have first quarter, second quarter, third, and fourth quarter. I spelled out the entire word quarter. I don't want that. What I'm going to do is use my find and select, or find and replace, by going up to my ribbon in this final group, editing, clicking there and choosing find or replace. And I want to replace them, so I'm going to go ahead and click replace. And it brings up this window. Find, you just type in what you want and it'll highlight it. Replace, you find what you're looking for and tell it to replace it with something else. So find what? I'm going to start with the word quarter, and I'm going to replace it with an abbreviation of quarter. Now if I go ahead and choose find next, see what happens? It selects that cell, the first one that it finds, with the word quarter. And then if I go ahead and choose replace, it replaces it with my abbreviation, my QTR, and automatically found the next one. I'm going to go ahead and choose replace all. It'll tell me that the search has been completed and how many replacements it made. I will close this window, and you see I now have the word quarter replaced with the abbreviation QTR, and it did 3 of those cells virtually at once. So imagine if I had the word quarter or whatever I needed to change, even a value, a word, throughout my entire worksheet, I could change them all just that easily. It's time for us now to go ahead and move on to working with ranges, selecting ranges of data. A range is a group of data that you want to go ahead and affect at the same time. Maybe you want to add it together. Maybe you want to format them all in a certain way. Maybe you want to go ahead and cut or copy that particular group of cells. whatever it is, we're going to show you how to get only what you want by using click and drag, some keyboard shortcuts, shift plus arrow, control shift and arrows, control shift spacebar, control click, and control A. So why don't we go ahead and get back to our worksheet. Now, a range of cells, like I said, is a group of data you want to affect at the same time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start by selecting all of our data here, all of our values that we put in. The first thing most people learn is they go ahead and they click on the first cell, hold down your left mouse button, and drag down. And I'm right-handed, so I go to the right. Somebody who's left-handed might be more comfortable going to the left, but going to the right and down at the same time until I encompass all of the cells I want to work with in this big black cell selection box. You'll notice that the cells are lightly colored with a sort of a lavender, so we know they're selected, except for the first one. The very first one we selected is still white, but that's okay. It's still part of this group. Now, I have this selected, and I can do things like format it. I can cut it. I can copy it. I can move this whole range. Remember how we moved these cells? I can go ahead and take this and move that whole range just like that. I'm going to go ahead and put it back though. That's a group of cells. That's a range of data. Now, what if I just wanted to go ahead and maybe select this first column? Remember, we selected the whole column by clicking on the column letter, but I don't want that. I just want this first group of numbers. All I have to do is click on the first one, hold down my left mouse button, and drag down to select these adjacent cells, C5 through C10. Maybe I just want to go ahead and select C6 through F6. Same thing. I get my selector, remember this big white crosshair, somewhere in that cell, hold down my left mouse button, and drag to the right. Those are ranges of data. We are selecting ranges of data. Now I want to go ahead and select the range of C5 through C10. And sure, I could go ahead and just click and drag. And that's pretty easy with a small amount of data. But what if I've got 50,000 rows of data and I want to select from C5 all the way down to the end? A real quick way, another keyboard shortcut to go ahead and do that. Hold on your control key and your shift key and use your down arrow. And that will go ahead and select from the first cell down to the first blank cell. So that gave me C5 through C10. I can also go ahead and use it to go across. I'll hold down my control shift and my right arrow, and see it selects that range up to the first empty cell. So a couple more ways to select small groups of data. So far, all of these selection methods that I've shown you have allowed us to select adjacent cells, cells that are next to each other. But what happens if I want to go ahead and select non-adjacent cells? Let's say I want to select C5 and D10. Well, if I click and drag, I get all of these other cells. If I click, shift, click, I still get all of these. I can't use my arrows. That doesn't work. If I want to select individual non-adjacent cells, what I need to do is hold down my control key, click on the cells that I want, and it will select only those cells. You'll notice that I have a very light blue, that sort of lavender color again around these cells. those are the ones that are selected. If I go ahead and delete those, you'll see what I'm talking about. It allowed me to select non-adjacent cells. Let's go ahead and let's undo that. So, remember, that's hold down your control key and select the cells you want. They'll get that light blue color except for the last cell that you select. It'll have a white border and a white fill, but it's still selected. We want to go ahead now and select what's called the active region or the current region. That is an area on your worksheet that has information in it that is adjacent, at least in terms of rows and columns, to something else. Let me explain. The first column in our worksheet that has no data is column J. You'll see that we have stuff in every single column other than that. The first row that has no data in it is row 12. We have data in 11. We have data in 3. So this, from A1 through I11, is what we call the current region. If I want to select that from anywhere in this data, I simply hold down my control key, my shift key, and then hit the space bar. And you see that selects the entire current region. If we went ahead and did this, let's insert a row. Actually, that's not where I wanted to put it. And insert a column. And I just wanted to select this data. Control Shift Space. When I want to select the entire worksheet, all 1.7 billion cells, what I need to do is go ahead. It's very easy. There's two ways to do it. You can either go ahead and select an empty cell. You don't want a cell that's got data in it. Select an empty cell. Hold on your control key and type the letter A. And notice they have the light blue everywhere. The entire worksheet is selected. I can also go ahead, this little symbol here, it's a little triangle to the left of the A and above the 1. Same thing. I can click there and select the entire worksheet as well. That's it for selections. We have click and drag, shift in our arrows, control shift arrow, non-adjacent cells, holding down our control key, control A for select all. As you can see, we have several methods of selecting data. Exactly the data that we want, the range of data that we need to go ahead and work with. The next thing we're going to talk about is autofill, or I hate typing. Autofill is soon going to become your best friend. It's going to allow us to save lots of time with our Excel experience. We're first going to talk about autofilling with text. There's some really great things in here we're going to do. Then we're going to autofill with numbers. We're going to show you some really customizable ways you can use it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is show you how to create custom lists. So why don't we go ahead and get going. We'll go back to our Excel workbook here, and we're going to start in a blank area. We're going to scroll down, and we're going to start right here. We'll start in A17. The very first thing we're going to do is type in the word January. Now I need to go ahead and make a list of rows for every month, January through December. And I could go ahead and I could type in every single cell, January, February, March, etc. Or I can do this. Remember before we talked about this selection tool. It's that big white crosshair. And how if I move it onto the edge of a cell that I've selected, it turns into that four-headed arrow with the little mouse pointer that allows me to move it. Down here in the lower right corner, you'll see a little black box. And if I move my mouse right on top of it, it turns into a very small, thin black crosshair. There's no arrows anywhere. No arrows at the compass points, no mouse pointer. That little thing is called the fill handle. We're going to grab it, hold down our left mouse button, and drag down 12 rows. And you'll see it gave me January, February, March, April, May, etc. all the way down to December. That's called autofill. Autofill allows us to go ahead, it takes the first value in this series, and as you drag down and make that selection, it fills in with the next value in the series. In other words, Excel knows that February follows January, March follows February, April follows March, and so on, and it fills in those values. How much typing time is that going to save you, huh? Let's go ahead and let's do another one. I'm going to type in Monday, and this time I'm going to drag my fill handle and pull it across. And you'll see I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. Now I went a little bit further this time. I got back to Monday. When we come to the end of the week, Sunday, we'll come to the end of that list, whatever it is, it doesn't just stop. It doesn't try to make things up. It just repeats. So that's why I have Monday here. Now if I continued to go on, I would have Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. Now, you see these little boxes here? That is called a smart tag. They just give us, as you can see from the screen tip, autofill options. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on it, and you'll see it gives me this little menu. There's a bunch of different choices, other things that we can do with our fill series. Let's go ahead and let's select copy cells. And suddenly now I have a week of Mondays. I sure don't want that. Let's go ahead and do it again. Go down to fill weekdays. Now it gives me Monday through Friday, Monday through Wednesday in this case, or whatever. It just gives me the work week. I can go back to fill series, or in this case fill days, so that I can get back to what I had, Monday, Tuesday, etc. The next thing I want us to do is we're going to go ahead and see how we can use this with some other things. Let's put in today's date. I need to fill this column with the date, every date in a row. I'll grab my fill handle and pull down, and you see it gives them to me that way. January 11, 12, 13, etc. It'll also go across, just like we did with the days of our week. We can use any of these in any direction. Let's see what else we can do. There's a few other things. Remember when we did this? Rather than typing first quarter, second, third, fourth, I can do that. Save me some more time. And again, you'll see, once it gets to fourth quarter, it just repeats. It doesn't give me fifth quarter, sixth, seventh, whatever. What if I want to do a numbered list? Well, if I type the number 1 and grab my fill handle and pull it down, well, I just get a column of 1s. That's not really going to help me. That's not going to do anything for me. So what I need to do, let me delete those, is teach Excel what exactly it is I want to do. I'm going to type the letter 1, use my enter, and in the cell below it, type the number 2. Now I will go and select both of those cells. Remember how we did that? I got my cell selector, my selection tool, clicked, held down my mouse button and dragged down so that both of these cells are selected. Then I'll grab my fill handle and pull down, and now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. By grabbing these two cells, by putting in a 1 and a 2 after it, I've told Excel to increase my series, increase the value in my series by the value of 1. I told it what I wanted. I don't always have to do it by 1 if I'm using numbers. Let's try something else. I'm going to put in 1.5, and then in the cell below it, 2. If I select those both now and drag down, I get 1, 5, 2, 2, 5, 3, 3, 5. And it doesn't work simply with numbers. We can really teach Excel what it is I want. I had a woman one time in a class ask me, she needed to make a worksheet that had the date for every Friday. She didn't care about the rest of the work week. She worked in payroll. She just needed the date for every Friday. So I don't know if Friday the 13th was, or if the January the 13th was a Friday. Let's pretend that it was. And if it was, what we would need to do is then type in the following Friday, which would be 1/20. Now, same way I did with my numbered list, if I grab both of those and drag down, it gives me the date of every Friday. So you see, the autofill is very, very flexible. We can do a lot of things with it. We can teach it things. I'm going to show you one more thing with our autofill. I'm going to show you how to create a custom list. Say I've got a list of names, parts, whatever. In this case, we're going to use the names of our stores that we need to type in over and over and over again, perhaps several times in a day or in a week. Rather than having to type out that whole list every time, wouldn't it be neat if I could just type out one name and then go ahead and use my autofill to complete that list? Well, we can. Let's go ahead and let's scroll back up here. What we're going to do is open up our Office button and go down to the right corner here where it says Excel Options. From our Options panels, we're going to go to the popular one. And about the middle here, we see Edit Custom Lists. Go ahead and click there. Now, we see the lists that we had already. We have our days, our months, the abbreviations of such, but we are going to import this list. So, go ahead and this little button here, the collapse box button, we click on that and you'll see it collapses our box here. We're then going to go and click and drag to select this area, our names, our store names, or I should say our store locations. Click on this button again to expand the dialog box and click on Import. And you see now my list is here. And it's in Excel. It's not just in this workbook. It's in Excel. I can now use this in any Excel workbook that I have. If I have this list selected and I need to go ahead and change it, let's say we closed up the Nile store or we added another one, I can add or delete them in here. But we're fine with it the way it is. Go ahead and select OK and OK. And now let's go down here and I will start with the Nile store since it's the shortest thing to type. Grab my autofill and it filled down my list, didn't it? Very cool stuff. And you can use that with any lists of simple text. It won't do simply numbers. If I went ahead and wanted to create a list out of this, it wouldn't let me do it. But text, sure, no problem. So we learned how to use autofill with text, our months, our days of the week, dates, numbers. We created specific numbered lists. We also used a custom list so that we could go ahead and repeat things that we use most often. That about wraps it up for our autofill. Why don't we go ahead and let's review what we learned. The first thing we did was talk about entering data. We went ahead and saw that all we had to do was type in the cell that we have selected. We could also go ahead and type it in up at the formula bar. Me personally, I think you're better off putting it right in the cell that you want. That way you know always where you are. Editing. We saw how we could edit data. We could go up into the formula bar and edit it there, or if we want to replace it completely, we just need to select that cell and type over it. We then went ahead and learned how to cut, copy, and paste. Cutting allows us to move things. Copy does exactly that. It makes a copy of that data, and we can paste them wherever we want. And don't forget about the clipboard, using it as a virtual storage tank, a place to go ahead and save things for use later on. Undo and redo. We went ahead and saw that we could undo the last 100 actions, remembering that things on the Office button can't be undone. And we can also redo anything that we undid. Inserting. We talked about how to insert rows and columns, how to delete rows and columns. We adjusted the width and the height of our rows and columns. We use find and replace to easily change data in our cells. We learned how to select ranges of data. We had a lot of neat things there, click and drag, and a bunch of keyboard shortcuts. And the last thing that we talked about was autofill. We learned how to use autofill to streamline entering text, days, months, creating a custom list. In later lessons, I promise you, I'm going to show you a lot more things that we can do with our autofill. It's going to be something that will really make our lives a lot easier in Excel. Thanks for joining me on this lesson, which was entering and editing data.